Good morning, everybody, and thank you to Nuran for providing that really useful overview, and hopefully you really saw from some of those examples that she gave that there is real value from doing these kind of partnerships. I'm going to talk a bit more about how the practicalities for how you might make some of those partnerships happen. I work for the Knowledge Transfer Network, as Gordon said, and we're the UK's innovation network, and our whole agenda is about connecting people to drive innovation. The reason that we do that is because we know that it delivers economic growth for the UK. We're not just doing it out of the kindness of our hearts. We do that through events like today, but also direct introductions that we can make to connect people together. We provide expert advice and insights across the UK's leading sectors for growth. And most importantly, we do a lot across those sectors. So we're not just about working in different silos, saying, right, if you work in biology, you must stay in biology. You work in transport, you must stay in transport. We're all about providing those cross-sector collaborations, because we know that exciting things happen when you bring together people who wouldn't ordinarily meet. And hopefully there's some of that in the room today, that you might not have bumped into each other in your normal day-to-day lives, but you can come together in an event like today and talk and meet and discuss how maybe you could work together. So just going to give one quick example of where you might not have foreseen a really obvious connection, in this case between astrophysics and food. No immediate maybe connection springing to mind there. But we worked with company Anakil, which is actually a spin-out from the University of Glasgow. Just happened to pick an example that was local. And that spin-out from the astrophysics department. And they had a technology that allowed ozone generation within packaging that did not interfere with the packaging in any way, so you didn't have to open the package or damage the package in any way. And we worked with that company to help them understand applications for food industry, connected them to a variety of companies across the food industry sector, and allowed them to develop that technology to extend shelf life and improve food safety of food packaging. So they were able to take that forward. They got collaborative R&D funding to support that project, and they subsequently got over £2 million in Series A equity funding as a result to scale up. So a fantastic example of a partnership that really drove innovation and led to a really big success for that company. Well, that's just one example. Looking at the funding that we get, for every £1 of grant funding that KTN receives, we deliver that into over £12.5 for the companies that we work with in terms of investment multiplier, and that just continues to grow and grow. Collaboration isn't just a one-off thing that just delivers a bit of growth and then you're back to the start again. In fact, what we see at 5 years down the line is that £1's grown to over £50 in value. So let's talk a bit more about how you can create value from your ideas and innovations. So what 2 things do we think a great project might need? Not specifically looking for volunteers, unless there's anyone wanting to put forward. So first of all, you probably need a good idea, preferably a great idea, one that's innovative, and we're talking disruption here, not just about a little incremental improvement. Second of all, you need a great exploitation plan. You need to have some kind of way of making that into a commercial reality. It needs to be based in reality. You need to actually have everything in place to make that exploitation plan happen. Okay, I accept. There might be a third thing. You might need a bit of money to make that all happen. Although, having said that, I'm going to scrub that whole thing out, because I actually think the most important thing is the who. You've all heard that cliche of an A-class team can make a success of a B-class product, but a B-class team can do absolutely nothing with an A-class product. Examples like Betamax and Blu-ray DVD are some of the most famous examples where having the superior technology does not necessarily translate to commercial success. So ideas really mean nothing unless you do something with them, and you need to have the right people in your team, whether that's directly in your company or people that you work with, to make that happen. And you need to consider the whole process. So right from the start when you're designing, and we're going to hear much more about that whole process from speakers after me, right the way through the development process, production, and right the way through to sales as well. And you need to really think about that whole process and how you're going to, do you have the right people in place? And if you don't, how are you going to find them? So what support is there available to you? Well, the good news is that there's lots. The slightly confusing news is that also there is lots. So I'm just going to give you a really quick, high-level overview of the UK funding and support landscape. So we've obviously got Department for Business and Energy, Innovation and Skills up at the top here, and they fund the research councils over here on the, yep, you're right as well as my right. On the right-hand side, that support basic and applied research and facilities. On the other side, we've got Department for International Trade, or Scottish Development International for us here, which is all about helping you export your technology overseas and, really importantly, making sure you get paid for that exporting. And in the middle, we've got Innovate UK, the UK's innovation agency, with the remit to support wealth creation of UK companies. And as well as providing funding and support directly, they also support these three organisations underneath to provide added support as well. So we've got Enterprise Europe Network, who act locally to provide business support services, but also connect you up, and it's Enterprise Europe Network, but it's really so much more than Europe. I think if you look on the map of all the countries that are involved in the EEN, it's pretty much more than half the world. You've got the Catapult Centres, providing access to state-of-the-art facilities and the associated expertise that you might need. And of course, KTN, the Innovation Network, connecting you up with the right people, with the right solutions, and with the money that you need to make it all happen. Of course, we've also got regional programmes, and particularly lucky in Scotland that we've got a lot of extra support regionally. So we've got Scottish or Highlands and Islands Enterprise, depending on where you're based, Interface, Business Gateway, Scottish Funding Council, innovation centres, which are fairly similar to the Catapult programme. You've got access to all of these things as well. And not forgetting that you've also got a whole load of stuff going on in the private sector, from accelerators, incubators, and Nuran talked about some of the corporates that are getting involved in those kind of schemes. You've got traditional bank finance right through to modern finance like crowdfunding. You've got service providers, legal, accountancy, HR. All of these organisations have support available to companies that are looking to commercialise new products and services and really create growth. I'm just going to focus a little bit more down onto Innovate UK and their support. So anyone know how much money Innovate UK awarded last year? Ben? It's a very unfair test. I should have primed it beforehand. Yeah. So it's £561 million. Unfortunately, I can't talk about this year's delivery plan at the moment. General election restrictions mean that the publication of that plan has been delayed. But £561 million for last year. And as part of that, there was a new structure for how that money was being spent. As you can see, it was being divided up across these broad sector themes, as well as an open competition for other market-led projects. This is roughly how it works. You have 2 competitions per year, one month X and then 1 month X plus 6. So you know exactly when those are going to happen. Keeps adding 6 months on to when the last one was. That's when the next one will be. Fairly straightforward. Looking at last year, each competition was roughly up to £15 million in total. And again, just roughly speaking, you have from up to 100,000 for a single company to do like a 1-year project, a feasibility study, a sort of find, if you will. And then on the prove end, the collaborative R&D, you could do up to 3 years, up to £2 million projects. So a really wide scope to enable you to innovate. The themes are really broad. So although there are themes, definitely read the documentation to check about the scope, because there's lots of things that are in scope that you might not necessarily realise from just that top heading. And there are also still a lot of extra competitions as well as this basic structure. And Ben's going to talk a bit more about one of those, the Design Foundations competition this afternoon. And there's, again, lots of places that you can come to for help. There's the help desk at Innovate UK, and you can also come to KTN. And again, very similar for the open competition. So, in summary, what this means, this new structure, is that you can really look ahead and plan. You don't have to sit there and just say, oh, a competition's just popped up, I need to rush around and throw an application together and I have to get it in for this deadline. You can be planning 6 months, a year ahead, probably longer, and looking when those competitions are going to be coming out and what you can do now to start planning for those. So really, that's going to enable you to work out who you should be working with, not who you can round up in 3 weeks' time that will be able to get you all of the documentation that you need. So take a much more proactive approach, really take advantage of this structure, and give yourselves that time to plan the best consortium or the best team that you can. It is a competition after all, and having that really strong consortium or collaborative team will really give you the edge when it comes to getting that funding. And make sure that you use KTN and the others that I've talked about to help you. There is a lot of support out there to help you find partners, prepare your application, give you feedback and advice. So take advantage of that.